And what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of MLS History Retold on the Designated Players and MLS podcast. This week, we're covering a memorable moment in Houston Dynamo history when facing adversity in the 2007 conference semifinals resulted in one of the most memorable games in MLS playoff history. Then, a look back at maybe the single most famous goal in MLS history, Taylor Twellman's playoff bicycle kick. I'm Andrew. That's Connor over there. And this is MLS History Retold. What's up, buddy?
This is like the sixth time already we're talking about Houston. And they've only been around for 2 years.
Yeah, at this
It's an
point,
insane number of times.
crazy
0607 Houston is different gravy.
that they were, but unfortunately, I think it gets pretty dull after this. I think it's pretty quiet over the next decade or so.
I thought they were good. I thought they were challenging against the Galaxy. I know they didn't end up
That's
winning.
right. They had like 2013 kind of back to backs, but after that, it
Like
kind
the
of
late era of the Galaxy dynasty, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
they're competing
and then they
against them.
kind of fell off the map.
All right, Benny Ball's bringing them back. Don't quit. Don't count them out yet.
Heyo,
Except
unless he
in
gets canceled by lower league Twitter.
I
What?
think I mean I think he probably already has been.
What? Oh man, you know what can't be canceled, Connor? Our scarf game. It is too strong. What are you rocking today? I can only guess.
Oh damn. I don't really know. Maybe the same Houston scarf I've busted out for like I don't at least this is like almost the third episode in a row I've done Houston. So get used to the scarf if you're yes, you can point to your Houston scarf all you want. Get used to the Houston scarf.
Well,
Hopefully there's a break of it for a while after this.
I'm bringing out one we haven't talked about in a little bit. At least I haven't talked about it. And that is our good friends Upside Down Chicago Fire. Different from regular Chicago Fire.
Ugly Chicago Fire.
Yeah, not a fan of this one. You got the weird like crisscross on the back.
One of the worst decisions in MLS history. They had literally one of the coolest badges, and then they went, "Yep, this is better."
Yeah,
How
no,
could you look at that and say that that's better than what they had previously?
well, this starts the rebrand wars, right? Montreal went for 2 years. Chicago went for a year. Like Columbus had one for like a year, I think, or 2 years.
Columbus almost had a whole city rebrand.
Yo. Well, scarves are in. It's time to jump back in time with Connor first.
Yes. So, as Andrew mentioned, I will be talking about the playoff series between the Houston Dynamo and FC Dallas, with most of the focus on the second leg of this home and away affair. No special sources outside of, on this one, mainly just through Wikipedia and Transfer Market. But if you listen to our episode on the Rico Stomp, which I believe should be like 2 history episodes back, this is basically going to be like a part two. It's a completely different game from the Rico Stomp game, but it's the next chapter in the Houston Dallas rivalry. This time, even more at stake because they're meeting in the playoffs. So let's quickly recap the end of the regular season for the two sides. So when the two sides met at the Rico Stomp game, Houston was 2 points behind Chivas USA for top of the West, while Dallas was 5 points behind Houston. With the massive win for Houston, it helped them secure a place above their rivals Dallas in the standings. However, they were not able to catch Chivas for top in the West, missing out by 1 point in the end. The Western Conference finished with Houston second and Dallas third, with Dallas being the wild card team with the most points, which meant we were getting another round of the Houston-Dallas rivalry so soon after the last game in that regular season. Considering the two games were so close together, I have to imagine the tension and animosity between the sides was still ripe going into this matchup. Game one saw Houston travel to Pizza Hut Park, what a great name, in Frisco, Texas, to kick things off with Dallas at home, looking to get the two-legged series off to a good start. Who else would make the first moment of the game when in the 19th minute, Carlos Ruiz would swing a hand and hit Eddie Robinson in the face, earning the first yellow card of the series. If you remember anything from the Rico Stomp episode, you would know this is exactly how Carlos Ruiz plays. And it's ultimately what got Rico to snap. Would there be another incident like that again in this series, especially with Ruiz already causing some trouble so early on? You'll have to wait and find out. Not long after that, we would have the first goal of the series. A super long throw in sees Adrian Seru absolutely bomb a ball into the box, where Cochran makes a meal of clearing the ball, leaving Clarence Goodson wide open with the ball right in front of the goal, allowing Goodson to bury it. Goodson blasts it past a helpless Pat Onstad to see Dallas take the lead at home. In the 88th minute, Houston would have their best chance in the game after a point-blank shot is saved by Dario Sala, with the follow-up by De Rosario blasted wide. The game would end 1-0 to Dallas, meaning Dallas did the job at home and would carry the aggregate lead heading back to Houston. Houston would host Dallas at Robertson Stadium, and this is where the fun begins. We kick things off early with a long ball finding the head of Kenny Cooper, who heads it across the box to a wide open Carlos Ruiz, who does Carlos Ruiz type things and slams the ball past Onstad, giving them a 1-0 lead in the game and a 2-0 lead in the aggregate. Absolute best start you can imagine if you're a Dallas fan. Houston never dies, though, so Dallas will have to stay on their best. In the 46th minute, a nothing ball heads towards the corner flag with one Houston and one Dallas player chasing after and ushering the ball out of play. Arturo Alvarez is the Dallas player in this case chasing down the ball. After the ball goes out of play, Alvarez throws what I think was an elbow into the stomach of the Houston player, who immediately buckles over in pain on the ground. The referee rushes over and with no hesitation gives Alvarez a straight red card. It's an absolute bonehead play with your team winning in aggregate and away from home. Dallas now has to play an entire half a man down, with Houston smelling blood in the water. In the 66th minute, a floated ball into the box finds who else but Brian Ching, who heads the ball into the box for a wide open Stu Holden, who volleys the shot into the bottom left of the goal, making the game 1-1. While the score in the game is tied, the aggregate is still in favor of Dallas, meaning the job is not done for Houston, but the door is certainly wide open for the comeback. Can Dallas really deal with another 25 minutes of pressure from the defending champions? Houston would not waste any time in making it level on aggregate, as in the 71st minute, Ching would make a run in behind while De Rosario would play a lovely pass to him at the exact same time, allowing Ching to beat Ray Burse in the 1v1. There's plenty of time left for Houston to come back and find a winner before the game even gets to extra time. However, Dallas would bunker down and hold them off, meaning that the game would indeed go to extra time. Houston, being a man up and with all of the momentum, has to be the favorites. And at this point, it would take a Dallas miracle to win the series. But if there is one thing we love to talk about in our history segments, it's a miracle. Unfortunately for Dallas fans, there's no miracle here. As in the 5th minute of extra time, Dallas's defense would completely fall apart as Mullins' cross would find Joseph Nguyen, who mishandles the touch. But don't worry, the Dallas defense was too busy looking for an offside call that the mishandle falls right to Brian Ching, who is wide open to score and give Houston the lead. And wouldn't you know it, nobody was offside. Luckily for Dallas, this isn't golden goal, so they can still technically come back and win with 2 goals or score 1 goal and hope to take it to pens. But things are definitely looking bleak for Dallas. To put the nail in the FC Dallas coffin, in the 10th minute of extra time, Brad Davis with a free kick from the 12-yard line, and yes, I said 12-yard line because they're literally playing on a football field, rifles one past Ray Burse to make it 4-2 on aggregate and put the game to bed. While the scoreline was set in stone, there was a little bit of action still left in this game, as in the last few minutes of extra time, Dallas's Drew Moore and Pablo Riquetti picked up yellow cards for repeated fouling and dissent, respectively, with this being the second yellow card for Drew Moore, meaning Dallas' collapse ends the same way it began, with a player sent off. Houston would get the job done at home with a little bit of help from some Dallas players to seal the deal. As we've discussed previously, Houston would go on to beat KC in the Western Conference Finals and further go on to beat the New England Revolution in the finals to become one of the very few teams in MLS history to win back-to-back MLS Cups, not to mention also doing it in the first 2 seasons of the Houston Dynamo's existence. Another chapter in the riveting story of the Houston-Dallas rivalry has come to a close, with Houston picking up yet another win.
When I looked up what you were doing, I kind of went in and was like, oh, let me see. And I saw all the cards and all the insanity. I was like, that is gonna be a fun story.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the exact same thing too because when I looked it up on Wikipedia, it's like, oh, extra time game. Like Dallas has like 1,400 cards and like Houston has a few too. I was like, maybe there must have been a fight or something that happened,
Mhm.
but honestly, there wasn't. There was just a lot of cards in the game. But I guess the closest thing you get to a fight is the Alvarez red card, which was just so dumb. Like you would think if he doesn't do that, Dallas probably sees this out and moves on.
Yeah, and imagine what MLS would be, right? We were talking before a couple episodes back on history where if Houston never existed, they never moved San Jose. San Jose would have like 4 trophies in like 6, 7 years or
Be
something
one
like
of the
that.
most successful franchises in the league's
Yeah.
history.
Well, and now you look back and like, oh well, back to back years of existence, they've won MLS Cup. Well, what happens if you don't lose that your head there? Where do they go from there?
Yeah, yeah. Who knows? I mean, it could change everything. I mean, we were just talking about Houston being successful in that like 13-14 period or that early 2010s period. Who knows if that even happens if Houston doesn't win this MLS Cup? I mean, obviously that's a whole what if kind of different series to dive down into, but it's certainly interesting to think about.
Somebody say spin-off series?
Do we have? I feel like we have enough series as is,
There's
but I
never
do.
enough.
I love those topics. I think they're really cool.
We've got 7 days a week, baby. We can put content out all
Oh
day
God,
long.
I don't need an episode every day of the week,
Oh,
please.
man, you know what I do need every day of the week though? A banger. A goal that just is out of this world. And when you look back in MLS history, the same few goals are shown as like promos, right? The ones that you'll never forget. You've got the Balboa bike, which we've covered before, the Henri Olympico, De Rosario's free kick. But to me, none stand out more vividly than Taylor Twellman's playoff bicycle kick. I remember watching this live as a kid, going outside and then practicing bicycle kicks. That's how vividly this sits in my brain. This goal meant more than just a positive result, but one that gave hope that Gloria may finally come back to New England. The date is November 8th, 2007. The conference finals are among us. The New England Revolution, second place Eastern Conference finishers, whose path we have covered in our last history episode. Go check that out if you haven't already. They took on the Chicago Fire, who finished fourth in the East and got past DC United in the conference semis to get to this point. Coming into the playoffs, Chicago, decent season, led by goal scorers Chad Barrett and Chris Rolfe, who had 8 each, and were headlined by superstar Cuauhtemoc Blanco, who we also covered his time in Chicago. Check that out if you haven't seen that one. He led the team in assists that year. New England, on the other hand, had a striker that nobody could stop in Taylor Twellman, who was catching assists left and right from midfielder Steve Ralston. So much so, he was on fire that Chicago came out the day before the game and made it very clear, we will not let Taylor Twellman beat us. The history of these two clubs, specifically in the playoffs, have been covered pretty extensively to this point. But to recap, Chicago Fire, 3 MLS Cup final appearances, winning 1 in their expansion season in 98, and then losing in 2000 to Sporting KC and 2003 to the LA Galaxy. New England, on the other hand, were not as fortunate, making it to 3 separate MLS Cup finals, including the 2 ones previous to this story in 2005 and 2006, also adding in 2002. They were struck by the bad luck bug and could not get over that hump. In 2007, they hoped that their luck would finally change, and Taylor Twellman gave them just that little bit of belief. He and his team kicked off the game knowing that one goal in this one-legged affair could mean yet another chance at glory for the New England side. Twellman specifically had a chip on his shoulder. Pundits all over the country were questioning his ability to get it done in big moments. On that night, he was determined to prove them wrong, and prove them wrong he did. And against no better team than Chicago, one who grew to be a bit of a rivalry for New England to this point. In just the 2 years prior to this game, the teams played each other 9 times in all competitions, with Chicago having a slight advantage in the head-to-head, but New England with the more important games, including a PK shootout win in the playoffs the season before. But this time, the game meant even more, as New England felt that this was their year and nothing would stop them, not even a cursed Easter bunny. The game kicked off on a freezing cold Thursday night, and the quest for the MLS Cup final was on. Now, for a game as exciting as this played out to be, it was relatively quiet for the majority of the half until New England was awarded a throw-in in the 38th minute. Steve Ralston took the throw short, and the ball was laid back to him for a first-time service into the box. Everybody knew what was going to happen. Even Taylor Twellman said that once we got a throw-in from 28 yards or in, I was going to go earn my paycheck. I knew what was happening. But they just left him and him alone in the box being guarded by center back Desan Robinson and Logan Paws. This 2v1 aerial service seemed impossible for the 5'11" Taylor Twellman to win, but impossible was never a thought to him. The windy night caused the service to move in the air, and both Twellman and Robinson mistimed their jumps. The ball struck the head of Taylor Twellman and flew straight up into the air. At that point, there was no second guessing. There was no even thinking. He set his body up to do the spectacular, knowing it was either going to come off brilliantly or somebody was going to get hurt. He jumped into the air and started to twist as the two Chicago defenders tried their best to throw their bodies in front of the ball. But it mattered not, because somehow, some way, Taylor Twellman squeezed the ball between the two defenders, struck it with inch-perfect accuracy, and as the world watched the ball fly into the bottom corner of the goal, they knew they just witnessed something spectacular. He jumped up and sprinted away, pumping his fist, screaming, "F yeah!" before enjoying a strong embrace with coach Paul Mariner. During an interview, play-by-play announcer on the day, Dave O'Brien, mentioned, "When you give up a goal like that to a player that you publicly claimed you were not going to allow score or beat you on the day, it knocks the wind out of your sails." And boy, did it. Chicago from that point could only muster a few shots from distance and really couldn't get much else going, resulting in the New England Revolution taking home the Eastern Conference title in 2007. Taylor Twellman put it best. There are goals that you score, and there are goals that you dream of scoring. Everybody's dreamed of scoring a goal like that, and anyone who tells you otherwise is full of it. And as a player myself, I can tell you that dream has crossed my mind. Not only did Taylor score the goal of every kid's dreams, but he did it in one of the biggest stages in American soccer at that time. It was the goal that took them to the finals, where they would come agonizingly close to finishing the job they had spent 10 months setting up for. While it did not win them the big prize, it was a goal that will be forever remembered in MLS history, both in new fans and in lifelong ones.
Man, Twellman's like one of the guys that I think of in history as like, or in MLS history as like one of the biggest what ifs. Because he was just like, he was like a couple of steps away from arguably being like the best player in this league's history. Like if New England could have got a couple of those championships that they got to the finals in, or if he like ended up playing a couple more seasons, like I think we're talking the conversation about him as one of like the top 10 best of all time. I mean, people might already have that conversation now, but just imagine those like couple of extra things on his CV as well. Man, he was unreal.
I mean, you're talking. I just looked up here. You're talking a goal every 150 minutes. That's less than a goal every 2 games. That's insane, right? Like that. And again, you're right. You don't mention it much because his career, I wouldn't say it's short, but it was definitely cut shorter, right?
Yeah, like you would think he would have had like maybe a couple more seasons in there. Not that, like you said, it wasn't short, but
no, but double-digit goals in every season except one, where
yeah,
he played over 2,000 minutes. I mean, and again, things that were cut short and disappointingly so because of his talent. But if he was doing that today, everybody would be screaming like, "Oh man, he shouldn't be, he should be in Europe and whatever," and probably so. But he also got himself 30 caps with the men's national team, right? Looking at a couple of Copa Americas, Gold Cups, international friendlies, like what could have been if he kept going and fell at the right time.
yeah. I mean, that's another what if episode. Maybe it
Spin-off.
does need to be a series.
Spin-off.
Maybe it is going to be a series. Who knows at this point?
We'll have to sit down and really think about it one day. But until that day, guys, thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode of MLS History Retold. This is getting to be more and more fun because it's getting more and more recent. A lot of you guys are going to remember more of what's going on and you get to relive it with us. So make sure you're following wherever you get your podcasts. When we next go live, the next episode will probably be some sort of fun game online. So make sure you are following us on Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok, so you can see when those go live and you can interact with us and play along. But until that time, thanks so much for listening, and we will see you next time on the next episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. See ya.